I just need to make sure that my GeForce Now is gonna work
Righty.
because it sometimes turns off recording if I'm like streaming or anything, but we're not gonna be streaming, so.
Yeah.
Okay, it's working. All right. Um. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right. So welcome to the unnamed HTCG podcast. This is me. I'm Zero from Captain's Orders, and this is Matthew from Mio Mashup. This is the first episode of our podcast together, and
Yeah.
in this episode we're going to be talking about the TCG space and how playtest. There's a lot of games being made, but there's not enough games being playtested. So yeah. Anyways, to be honest, I think we should start off by talking about the like what I just said about the first topic. Honestly, I think in the TCG space, there's a lot of issues. So, especially in the Epic Underworld space, there's a lot of issues that I've seen with like with playtesting TCGs. Since you if you ever go into that channel ever and you look in there, you see the channel's kind of dead. To be honest, there's not a whole lot of people talking in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not entirely, but I would agree that there's definitely been some gaps in activity in there for sure. It's like you would have some people talking about playtesting one day, and then it'd be kind of quiet for like a couple weeks at a time, and then it would be pop up. It's definitely kind of hit and miss, at least.
Yeah. And I think I like a lot of the ambitions of a lot of these creators, but the thing is, you're never going to get your game out if you just keep making your game and never testing it. And I think that's a huge problem because what people go into this thinking that they can just, I feel like a lot of people, the mindset I've seen people going into this is that they can just start doing a TCG and then like I don't know. They can just start doing a TCG and and they just post inside of TCG leaks and art and they just get a community off of that. And that doesn't work entirely half the time. Because I've seen creators even say like, "Oh, my first set's going to be released soon on gamecrafter. Y'all should go check it out." And nobody knows who they are because they didn't build an audience before, working on it. Before,
Yeah, I think. I'm trying to. Well, there's also kind of just playing in general, not just from the testing side of things. There's there's also once your game is out there and tested and is available to play, but like after the release, people aren't really kind of lose interest in playing it. And I think there's definitely some things that you kind of have to do as the creator of your game to really start encouraging people to really get in and play your game.
yeah. And I think one of the best things to this is going to be a bit about how to grow your community, which I will, if you guys don't know, I'm one of the teachers for the Epic Underworlds. I'm going to be one of the teachers for the Epic Underworlds HTCG Creation Academy. Link of the server down in the description. But and this is a little bit. I'm going to touch up on this briefly because I'm going to be talking about this more in depth in the class that I'll be teaching. But this is going to be how to build your community. I think the tip. I'll go ahead and say one tip currently I'm going to give is that you should build your community by playing other people's games.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta get to know people first, and then try out other people's games, show you have an interest in them, and then once you're able to start getting your game out there, they're gonna want to in turn may possibly have an interest in what you're doing, and then it'll grow from there.
It's a win-win for both sides if both people are playing each other's TCGs. Because if you play somebody else's first, they're gonna say, "Oh, I have an intention. It seems like you have an intention to be interested into my game. Why don't I come out and check out your game?" It's a win-win for both sides, and so I feel like as a community, I'd like to see that more often. You know, people talking in playtest chat. I know not everyone has all the time in the world, but you know, maybe a little bit more activity in the playtest chat would really benefit the community a lot more, because I think that there isn't enough people playing their games, and that also kind of leads into my next point with games being unbalanced because of that.
I think before we get into that, I also kind of want to add to it that there's also kind of like, well, not everyone wants to be involved in the testing side of things. Like they want to play the finished game, not necessarily help with testing. It depends on, some people are probably interested in that, and if you build, that's kind of something you can get if you build your community up a little bit first. You can find people who are more interested in testing out and giving feedback on that. Like when I was doing Mio mashup, I would have a period of time where I would put the cards on untap for a bit, and then I would collect people's feedback before I put it on gamecrafter to kind of fix all the to fix as many, at least as many as cards as I can. But it's definitely not something that people want to do when they're just getting to know you. They don't, or I don't know where I was going. I think I got a little off track a bit.
No, I understand you. I get that some people don't really, you know, like know you, and I think there's a lot of people who are very antisocial in here. And I get that there's a lot of people who are kind of scared to be in chats and stuff like that and talking. But I feel like it's important.
Yeah, I can kind of relate a bit to that. Yeah, I can kind of relate to that a bit.
Yeah, it's a psychology thing, but it's also just, it's very important with making your TCG. Personally, for me, with Captain's Orders, I never had a problem with this because I've always been a very social person. So I've never had a problem with building my community off of that. I was able to go around and test other people's games, and then people in return came to my game because of that. I gave people feedback. I looked at rules. I just gave people more motivation. I tried to uplift the community with not only just working on my game, but I also tried to help with other people's games as well, which then in return that helped build my community up to where it is currently. I still think I have a lot more growing to do, but I think my community is in a state currently where I have people who are consistently playing the game. Since one of the things that I think is really great in communities is I think you should be able to host events and stuff like that, where like
Yeah,
on an
that's,
often weekly basis is a good thing.
yeah. Or even just as little as like a monthly basis for like one big thing. Cause like that was kind of one thing I wanted to do that admittedly I haven't been as good at keeping up with. And there's definitely reasons I could get into for that, one one thing I wanted to do when I was growing my game initially was to have at least something going with my game as far as the playing side of things, at least once a month. Like I would have a big tournament one month, or I would host like a draft on Untap for one day of the month, or we would just kind of get in and play casually, or I would come in for a day and try to teach new players how to play the game. Because that's also important too. You want newcomers to feel welcome and then try to try out your game, and that's important to get people to playing.
I think the best way I've been able to retain new players while also keeping the old ones interested into the game is, so I have this event in my server that we host every week called Pick Up and Play Days, and it's hosted between Friday and Saturday. And it's basically just me. I go into VC and I sit with my community members and stuff. We talk about the game, we play the game, balance the game, stuff like that. It's a way to help interact in my community, just help, build my community in general, and also help balance the game. It helps me play test and balance the game a little bit more than I did in the past.
Yeah, and having a schedule is very important too, because if people know that there's a day they can look forward to jumping in and play, they'll be a little more inclined to want to set their own schedules. Say, hey,
Yeah,
this
people just
guy's
want.
hosting a tournament for his game. I want to be able to take part, or hey, there's a draft coming up for Neo Mashup. I want to take part in that. Just to give you a couple of examples there.
Yeah, I think that's very important because it's also just allows people to flex their schedule around for that, specific day. And if they can't come that day, it's whatever. But it just helps with building your community as well and keeping a retaining player base, for the
Yeah.
most part. But I think the next thing I did want to go into is because there isn't a lot of playtesting, I think there's a lot more people showing off games than there are people actually, again, playing games, of course. And I guess I am saying that again, but I think I like seeing a lot of these games, and I really want to play some of these games because some of these games do look really cool. But I think people spend too much time trying to make their game, and then when they go to actually play test it, they realize how bad the game is, so they get demotivated and stop working on TCGs entirely.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why you have to work on your game in stages. Because, like, I didn't start out, like, to give an example from my own game, I didn't start out set to just working on the art, like, immediately. Like I have a process for how I do my game. I kind of write out at first just an outline of what's going to be in the set, like just the basic abilities of what kinds of things I want to see and then I would like make some test cards for myself and play around with those a little bit, see how they feel, and then I'll make some changes and then I will and then once that's done, I'll take to working on the art, and then I'll put it on untap, and then take some time to collect feedback from other people, and then further adjust the cards before I'll put it out to the public for sale and
Yeah.
whatnot.
No, I kind of did mess up a little bit with my game by releasing my game before, realizing there was some other major balancing issues with the game, and I had to learn that lesson recently to not release to
I'm
not
just as
release your
guilty of
game
that
on
as
game.
well.
Yep, to not release your game on GameCrafter before you really balance your game because I think my first set's a bit imbalanced in terms of certain captains and certain archetypes. I think some archetypes are just better than others, and I think some playstyles are even just better than some archetypes. Um, Especially with Swarm in my game is a huge issue currently. I'm trying to find a way to balance but not completely gut the whole entire idea of Swarm. And it's kind of a challenge for me because it's just like, I guess it's just kind of like an uphill battle with creating your TCG. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it always seems like there's a new problem that needs to be addressed, but that kind of is a thing that is you can expect to happen as more people try your game out too. So,
yeah, and I think another thing I did want to touch up on is the I think people in general, literally, hmm. What do I want to say here? I mean, I think I do like all this beautiful art inside of the TCG Leaks channel, but I'd like to see the exact same activity I'm seeing from the TCG Leaks channel in the playtesting channel because I feel like a lot of people do make their just rush their either I don't think people rush their games, but I think people just get demotivated over time and then it just kind of ruins their idea of TCGs and stuff like that being like super hard to make. And I don't think a
yeah,
TCG is hard to make. It's just more of a motivational thing.
it's a time consuming thing for sure because it's not just making the art. You're also trying to figure out the
Yeah.
what abilities you want on the card, making sure how well those cards play against each other. And then if you're trying to like sell your game, you have to work on packaging, marketing your game as well. There's definitely a lot of aspects to it, and some of those aspects are going to have more appeal to people who are working on the game than others. And I think a lot of people I've noticed in the community tend to like the art process the most, which isn't in itself a bad thing, but still it is. The other parts of the game matter too as well,
I
because
personally
these are
yeah. Sorry.
Because these are games we're playing. They're not just pieces of cardboard with art on them that you can look at.
If you want to make it CCG, you can go to another server for that. But this is TCGs, not CCGs. It's a trading card game, which means it's a deck building card game most of the time.
Yeah, it's not like you can. It's not like you. It's okay to just make trading cards if that's the kind of thing you want to do.
Yeah.
You can make trading cards without the game, but if you want to make a game, you have to design them. You have to really work on the game aspect of it too. It's not something you can just leave on the cutting room floor.
It can't be too much of the game, or it can't be too much of the art. It has to be also about the game as well. Um, I think, what is it? I think that one of the things that I did see, so I think I did want to also talk about, you saw how Epic Underworlds, how he left recently, the HTCG community. And I think it's mostly because I think he's going in more of a art-based direction, and so he didn't really care too much about the game mechanics anymore, and so he doesn't really care about the game, like the mechanics of this game anymore, so he wants to probably just focus on doing art, which I fully respect.
Yeah,
If you
there's
want to
nothing
do
wrong with
something
that.
like that, that's fine. But again, we're talking about TCGs here, meaning we're talking about trading card games, meaning we're talking about, actual games here. Actual, basically tabletop games. Tabletop deck building card games. So
Yeah,
I think the community will definitely benefit from just playtesting games, or just playing other people's games in general. I think now, I do think that there's one very good example of a game that didn't need to build their community off of playtesting games, but it honestly takes a lot more work than just, building your game slowly over time. And I think Summoners TCG, for example, is a very, very good example of how you can build a game off of just, you can generally build a game off of just videos themselves, and it works, which we've seen it with Summoners. He came out of
yeah,
nowhere in December, dropped like 5 or 10 videos on his channel, and then pretty much launched his game immediately right after, and people followed because his game was already complete. Now, this
yeah.
probably
Like his first video. He did say he was working on it for a year prior to releasing his first video, so he already kind of had a bunch of testing done, probably with some friends in his area, I would imagine.
which I think does make sense to do instead of, honestly, I think playing in person is better than playing online. Now I get some people don't have that. No, I get, so some people don't have like friends who are interested in card games. So that's why you're playing online. So that's why I'm suggesting to a lot of people, if you want to build your game, just play online. Just introduce your game to people and just play online. Play test your game, see what works, see what doesn't. It's a general trial and error process when making a TCG, and I think that's something that
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think
of people need to understand. It's not gonna be sunshines and rainbows immediately.
yeah, you're definitely gonna run into some roadblocks or some bumps along the way. So the first video I put out for my game was actually not for Mio Mashup. It was for like for like a little predecessor. It was just Mio Mashup originated from a game that my brother and I made called the Make Your Own card game, which I know kind of not the most original sounding
Most
name in the
cliche
world,
name I've
but
ever heard, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, but it was kind of just a game. Originally, it was just something we would play with a couple of friends here and there. But I kind of wanted to. But I kind of got a little. I guess you could say I got a bit nostalgic for those days when my brother and I would play with each other. And part of me wanted to get some of those cards onto an online platform like Untapped so we could play that game together again. And that was kind of part of my motivation for wanting to get into the community was, and hey, maybe if I show this off to people, maybe others would want to try it too. And so that was like my first video was just I put my card game on the internet and here it is. And then I went from there showing how to play, showing off some decks I made, as well as some of the cards I've made over time. And
But then eventually you probably had the realization moment, like all of us with our first games. This game's pretty like this game's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like this game's pretty. It's hard to balance, and this game's pretty bad. So why don't I make a new game, like, and make it more
I
balanced
mean,
and better?
yeah. I mean, Mashup isn't technically new. A lot of the cards from set one were originally in that version of the make your own game that I put on Untaps. But I did take some time to tweak the cards a little bit to kind of balance them out a little bit. And though I would argue it's not, and I will admit it's not the most perfect job. I originally Neo Mashup wasn't going to be a thing. It was just going to be something I would use to kind of try out the gamecrafter, see how it works, because I've never used it before, and so it kind of blew up. Well, not blown up, but it kind of grew into something a little more than that, and so I ended up kind of redoing all the art from scratch. I was originally just going to use the art I previously made, but I instead decided to go with remaking the art, and then it kind of grew from there.
Yeah. And I think that's a really nice thing about TCGs. I think that there is a lot of people that, you can basically do that about their TCG. Hold on, give me a moment.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Sorry, I was just trying to fix something up. But as I was saying, I think that's a beautiful thing about TCGs. You can build your TCG off of really anything. I think that's another point I want to go into. Like, getting inspiration for your TCG is like you can build it really off of like anything at this point. Like there's TCGs about almost anything. If you want to build your
Yeah.
TCG off of like just if you want to build your TCG off of dinosaurs, you can do that. I've seen that before. If you want to build your TCG off of, like old cartoons or basically like, a parody of old cartoons, you can do that. You want to base your TCG around an anime you like, you can do that. It's just I think the medium is so wide and I feel like there's a lot of really cool ideas we could be seeing with gameplay wise that I feel like I really want to see be explored more. I
Yeah,
think
I think that sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I think that could also technically kind of lead into kind of why people aren't quite as keen on playing HTCGs as much as they are showing them off too. That kind of leads into, because we steal,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of guilty of this as well, is that a lot of games tend to kind of tread similar ground. Like you have like creatures you play that attack your opponent's life
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
I feel like a
Um,
lot of
and-
there's a I feel like a lot of people sorry, I feel like a lot of people I do agree with that because I feel like a lot of people in the community do think that a lot of TCGs are too similar to each other. But to be honest, when you go down to the mechanics about it, they're really not.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely variations on how you can express those similar concepts for sure. And like, because like, for example, like in my game, you can have a board full of creatures, but only one of them can attack per turn. So you kind of, if you happen to have multiple creatures, you have to kind of think about which one is the best suited for attacking that turn. Or maybe you want to have some creatures who you don't want to use for their attacks necessarily, but maybe for some other abilities and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And I feel like it just more iterations, just more just general new stuff that um I think a lot of like new ideas that people do come up with though when they do try to make new like ideas for TCGs and stuff tend to kind of go out the door because they haven't been done before. So the reason why I think a lot of people stick with creatures and units or, with my game minions is because making a new concept that has not been proven that it can work before is really hard.
Yeah, especially when you don't have a lot of experience with game design in general. Like trying to understand what can be fun and what isn't fun does take some skill to be able to understand.
I feel like making something new in this space is very hard, and I think you can still make a game that's interesting off of just, creating. I feel like you can make a game that's interesting off of the basic stuff like creatures and, a mana based or, resource based system. Oh crap, sorry. I feel like you can make a system, you can make something interesting off of that. But you have to like differentiate it up enough to basically make it different from other TCGs. Like you don't have to like always you don't have to you don't have to always be different or make something different. You can always just take something that's already exists and just make a new iteration of it.
Yeah, put your own spin on things.
Yeah. My game, Captain's Orders, for example, we have the whole game is very simple, but the thing I want to get into in later sets is I want to get into basically making the game more how do I say this? Making the game more just making the game more and more like complex when it comes to cards because I think something that I'm going to take one of the big 3 TCGs do really well. I think Yu-Gi-Oh in some ways actually makes their cards actually decently interesting, but I do think that there are there's issues with Yu-Gi-Oh for of course, but I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh makes their cards more interesting than their gameplay. And I think the gameplay of those cards and how they interact is more interesting than the main mechanics of the game. Because Yu-Gi-Oh, if we go down and strip all the cards effects and stuff like that, and we just really give only basic card effects and stuff, like we go back to GOAT format, Yu-Gi-Oh is very simple. Yu-Gi-Oh is an extremely simple game.
Yeah, you just normal summon a monster, you can attack with it,
Occasionally
deal
special
some
summon a
damage.
monster through a very simple effect.
Yeah.
Maybe flip summon effects and stuff like that. But that's all you had. Like that's all you do. And I think that's fine. I think GOAT format is a good format, in my opinion, with Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh crap. I'll have to cut that out the video. I don't know what happened there. But I think Go format is a very good format for Yu-Gi-Oh because I think it does also kind of just I think it's also just kind of like a good like middle ground. I think it's just like a really simple just way to I think Go format, what I'm trying to say is I think Goat format is a good like format to study from Yu-Gi-Oh if you're going to study Yu-Gi-Oh to make your card game. I think Goat format is a very good way to, study how Yu-Gi-Oh was fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
never
taking other games for example just cuz, why not? We're in TCG space
yeah.
pretty much. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't know a whole lot about Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't have a ton of experience with it. Like I played like some of like the Yu-Gi-Oh games like Master Duel and as well as playing a little bit with my brother, but I don't have I know of it, but I don't really like know a lot of like some of the more complexities, I guess, of the game, as you could say, but
I
still
personally, so a little bit of history about me. I'm not heavily into Yu-Gi-Oh right now. I had planned to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh since the formats are right now. But I used to be like semi-pro at Yu-Gi-Oh. I had top day regionals at one point, and then I also had top multiple locals um at one point. So I have experience when it comes to competitive trading card games, hence why I'm making Captain's Orders more competitive than, your average trading card game. Uh
yeah.
I think there's a lot of games though that do also kind of fall under the trope of trying to make their game too casual and also just kind of making it unfun because of that. Like I get making a game for fun is fun, but just like there are some people out there in this community who want to find a new competitive game. Like that's why I'm trying to make Captain's Orders competitive because Well, I want I personally want my own game to be competitive personally because it's just something I'm passionate about. I've always been passionate about competitive gaming in general.
Yeah, I think I'm not quite that way. I mean, the most I've done is like with Pokemon. Like I've like made top eight at like one of the league challenges that they have,
Yeah.
but I haven't like I'm not super into the competitive side of things. I know it's like important to a lot of people. There's definitely an audience for that sort of thing, but I try to kind of lean a little more casual a bit because I want people to be able to pick up the game, but I also want there to be like enough variety and strategy for a more experienced player to kind of have fun with too.
Yeah, and I think that's something that it's a hard balance to strike, especially with creators. I think that's a hard balance to just strike with just making your game in general because I think if you lean one way, if you lean too far one way, you're just gonna like not have like you're gonna shut out one whole community and only have another, and your community could be smaller because of that. And if you lean towards the competitive space, then it could also, your community could potentially become toxic and not as fun. So I think because I do think there is over the time, over years, because I think people are so competitive, people can be very competitive. I do think there can be toxicity that comes with competitiveness, but it can be regulated out with casualness as well, in my opinion. That's what I've seen. I might not be as I might not be as like informed with that part, I guess, when it comes to casual and competitive psychology, just like, just general card game player psychology, just how card game players think. But I do think that I have enough knowledge to know that I think that competitive can be very toxic at times, and I
Yeah.
get that that is a huge lead away from people playing competitive card games because it can be toxic. But I do think that competitiveness is also can be very healthy for a game because if you have a competitive community, that means they're dedicated to your game.
Yeah, they want to try to elevate other people to help them get better and become better at playing the game too, so that people can try to build their skill with the game, try to experiment more with their deck building,
Yeah.
things of that nature.
I think that this community doesn't suffer as much from toxicity. I do think there was one moment recently. I think you know what I'm talking about with the one moment recently with Zaccaroni, the Zaccaroni situation. I know it's resolved now, but I think that was one of the only moments I think we've ever had with toxicity in the community. But that was more on card game. That was more on specific creators in general. Um, Personally, I will go ahead and say just because of the situation that happened last night, I did kind of kick Zaccaroni out of my server till the situation was resolved since I did not know what to do. I didn't ban him, I just kicked him out. So, but I did want to mention toxicity because I think that's a huge example of what happened recently with how it has happened before in the community, but I think that it's regulated to a level where we can solve those issues without having to, shut out one side. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't want to go too in depth on it because it is kind of a complicated situation.
Yeah, I agree with
Um,
that.
but I do think that the community itself isn't as bad as like, something like the old Yu-Gi-Oh community. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh today is as toxic, but there in the old Yu-Gi-Oh community it was like really toxic. Like there's these people who are everyone called the elite, or people just called like people who were toxic like elite duelists because they were annoying to deal with because all they were talked about was how they think the game should be played and stuff like that and blah 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 stuff like that. But I don't think the community is that bad to a point where it's like that. I don't think this community really is as toxic or even as toxic at all. I just
Yeah,
think people are toxic.
most of my interactions with people have been pretty pleasant. Like,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
there really isn't a whole lot of toxicity in the community. I think the community is regulated when it comes to toxicity. However, the Zacharoni situation is one of those examples of, it can happen. It's just not as common. So, and if Zacharoni's watching this, no hate to you, man. We're just talking about the situation because it's just what happened. All right, we're not gonna drag this or anything out. Uh, we're just talking about the situation just because it does fall under the toxicity line of competitive and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just wanted to get that clear out. But I think the final point I did want to touch up on before we start ending it out is that, again, I do want to come back around to just playing TCGs more often is just I think it's something that we need to focus on as a community currently. Because if we don't play
Yeah.
TCGs more often, then we aren't going to get more than just the big three TCGs. Since, I had recently posted a meme, TCG memes, with the big three TCGs, being mine, Summoners, and Mio mashup, since, they're really the only three games people have played. Personally, I think they're the only three games people are currently playing at all. Um,
At least in
and
our portion of the
at least in
community.
our portion, yes. But in the
Yeah.
Epic Underworlds community, these are the only three games people are playing, but they all embody an example. I think my game, Mio Mashup, and Summoners, all three embody an example of how games can succeed with just basic mechanics. Because we all play very similar, but we all have different mechanics that are different enough from each other to basically, differentiate each other. Now, I do think I'd like to see more uniqueness in the community with card games. I just want more card games in the community because more card games equals just more fun. And I
Yeah.
get it's hard. I get that there's a lot of younger audience in the community that don't have access to Discord or um are very very like just aren't as talkative because there are a lot of antisocial people in the community. However, I do think that we can counteract that by just encouraging people to just start talking. How just having more chats, just start talking to people. Come on
Yeah,
your show once in a while and just
the
talk.
worst anyone can say is like, "Hey, you want to try my game?" The worst anyone can say is no.
Exactly. It's fine to hear somebody say no. It's saying if somebody has something going on, it's fine. I just think that the community needs to benefit from more generally, just the community needs to benefit more from just playing each other's games. And I think as a community, it would just benefit us way better if we all just started playing each other's games more.
Yeah.
And I guess some games aren't ready to be played, but I know there is a lot of games out there, especially I know there's a lot of games out there that are in a state where they can be played. However, the creators are so worried about making card arts and stuff to the point where they have never been played before or have rarely been played. So nobody knows how they play nor really knows how they work. And I think there's a lot of people, especially in my community, that worry more about the mechanics than the art itself. I think a lot of my community cares more about the mechanics of my game than the art. Because I mean, I think my art is good, but I think it's not on a level of like, I don't think it's on the level of like Summoners. I mean, Summoners is very simplistic, but it looks good. I think my art's a bit more scratchy in a way is what I could go ahead and describe it as. More scratchy, more sketchy based, but that is kind of the style of Captain's Orders in general, more sketch based art. um and especially with your game, Mio Mashup, I have not played your game yet. However, I am looking forward and interesting into playing in your game after I have finished the podcast editing and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I do think that just playing each other's games would benefit just the community more, and I think we can both agree upon that.
Yeah, I think definitely as a creator, it benefits you to have other people playing your game too. And then, because with more people playing your game, they can give you insights onto things that maybe you haven't thought about. And if you go out to play other people's games, you can potentially give them insight onto things that
Yeah.
maybe they haven't thought about.
For example, I do want to go ahead and say real quick that I had happen recently inside of my games community, Captain's Orders. My main game tester, Claw. Clawland had found a card that was, or I had found multiple cards that were very unbalanced, and so I had to straight, and I couldn't really do a whole lot to change them, so I had to straight upright ban them. But without him, that combo would have probably stayed in the game. And he also helped me figure out I need to rework one of my captains. So, just having a community like that who are just interested in playing your game and just play your game a decent bit can really help benefit and uplift your community more than, anything else really. I think making art is fine at the end of the day. Making effects is fine at the end of the day, but if you're not playing games, you're not making a community.
Yeah, you got to see if you're making games. You got to kind of see how they work in a practical setting.
Yeah. I think closing out, I think the main takeaway that I think that people should take away from this podcast, if you are listening on here still, is that I think we need to start playing more games and start worrying about the art less. And I might sound a little weird for saying that, but I think we need to just play games more than worrying about the art. And I get that worrying about art is a good thing because you want your game to look good, but I think that there is, there is a lot of making games, but there is not a lot of playing games. And I think we can fix that simply by just interacting with each other more, going into
Yeah,
VC, chatting more, just saying that, we should probably play, oh, if you play my game, I'll play your game, or if you play your game, I'll play my game. It's just I think that we need to just start, generally just playing games more and trying to experience other people's games because in return you'll gain a community off of that. And
yeah.
I'm
The
not s-
G exists in TCGs for a reason.
exactly. And TCGs are a very social hobby. So if you are not interested in being social, I'm sorry, but you will not be successful. And that's the hard truth. If you are not interested in being social about with your TCG, you're just not going to succeed in the community. And I'm going to just be plain harsh. It's a bit harsh. I know it's a bit harsh with me saying that, but it's true. It's just true. It's just like, I think you need to go into this with a social mind and just be social. Just, come out of your save zone every once in a while and just, play games, talk to people, have fun, we're nobody's going to bite. It's like I'll always be like, sometimes anytime I'm in VC, if you ever see me, I'll always be friendly. I'll always say, "Yo, what's good?" I'll always try to include you in the conversation. Anytime anybody joins VC, and I try to include people in conversations even as well. Anytime you join in or just see us playing, just come in, say hi, stop by, say hi. Just we can talk for a little bit. I don't mind talking about really any topics. It's just I think that just being more social, and I think this is more about, I think the entire, I think I already came up with the name of the first episode of the podcast is just being more social, be more social. I think that's the general takeaway. The general saying is just be more social in the community. That's really it, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing things before we go ahead and end off the podcast, or
Um, Not that I can think of. I think you kind of nailed it. Like it's kind of harsh that if you're not social, you're not going to be super successful in with your card game. It's definitely something that needs to be said.
it is something I think there's a lot of things in the community that need to be said, and I think there's a lot of things unspoken rules that have to be said in order for the community to really just thrive at this point.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, just the main takeaway from this podcast if you're listening in is to be more social, play other people's games and have a good time. But anyways,
Yeah.
that's me Zero from Captain's Orders. And that's me on Mashup. And we'll be signing
Yep.
off. Thank you for listening in, and we'll catch y'all later.